call.
When I pass by, all the people say,
There goes another guy out on the lost highway.
The lost highway. The lost highway.
All right, boys. Follow my lead.
When George Clooney walked into a makeshift recording studio in the film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, he was reliving a key turning point in musical history.
We hear that you pay good money to sing into a can.
Before the first simple recordings were made, country music was trapped in these remote mountains in America's rural South.
The place where I was born and raised. The place where he was born and raised.
Once on disc, the music would start to reach beyond the Appalachian Mountains, and popular music would never be the same again. The huge success of the film's soundtrack has reintroduced this music to millions.
The Oh Brother soundtrack shows the true country music, the kind that attracted us to the heart of country music.
The voice of the Oh Brother signature tune, Man of Constant Sorrow, belongs to someone who was raised in the hills of Kentucky and who's been singing it all his life, Ralph Stanley.
First time I heard that, I was probably about 11 years old. My daddy sung that song. And he didn't know many of the words to it, so we got together and sort of put some of the words to it. It's untelling how old that song is. It was out of existence till I recorded it in 1948. I am a man of constant sorrow. I've seen trouble.
Ralph Stanley is back on the record label which dropped him 50 years ago for being too old-fashioned. The music he plays, often referred to as bluegrass, after the bluegrass state of Kentucky, has powerfully endured.
It's not built on fashion. It's not built on a look. It's not built on an image. It's built on a sound. It's built on heart. It's built on spirit. It's just real music.
The songs speak of timeless issues, you know, that are primal, you know, to all of it. They resonate, you know, birth, death, longing, loss, salvation, joy. There's nothing really clever about it. It's just life, you know, laid right out on the plate for you.
This is the story of how country music made its way down from the mountain.
God's golden shore.
While Nashville is the home of commercial country music, bluegrass remains a statement about roots. The festival scene has always been an essential part of that, even for the biggest names in bluegrass, like Ralph Stanley.
Takes the word, man, sing away, song. Takes the word, man, sing away, song. Takes the word, man, sing away, song. Word now, but hoping word on.
Traditional country music is rooted in America's mythic past. Many of the songs came over with emigrants from Britain and Ireland and tell of the lives and the values of those first settlers and the hardships they had to overcome. 200 years before the first country record, these songs were part of the fabric of everyday life.
Everybody sung at home, sung on the porch, and if they were fortunate enough to have a piano or a guitar in the house, you know, it was a way of life for people back around the turn of the century.
It was in church that people learned to sing, and it became a training ground for the distinctive harmonies of mountain music.
They'd have all-day meetings at church. That was people's recreation. celebration. It was a thing that drew everybody together. They worked hard all week, and then they'd get together on the weekend, and it would be almost like a big party atmosphere. All day preaching and all day singing and all day dinner.
To my immortal home.
From this tradition, one particular family would be largely responsible for taking this music to the outside world.
The Carter family was probably, you know, they're the founding people of country music.
I look at a picture of them and it's just represents something to me about a whole era of America and sort of where we came from and our culture.
From 1927 to 1941, the Carter family recorded over 300 songs that now form the bedrock of country music.
There's a dark and a troubled side of life, but there's a bright and a sunny side too. Though you meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side you also may view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day and will brighten all the way if we'll keep on the sunny side of life. If we'll keep on the sunny side of life.
A.P. Carter was born in Poor Valley, Virginia in 1891. He grew up with his 7 brothers and sisters in a small house under the shadow of Clinch Mountain.
He didn't have much education. He had this tremor in his hands, and he was born like that, where his hands shook all the time. Children made fun of him. They made fun of him because his hands trembled, and his mother took him out of school.
For the young A.P. Carter, making a living meant walking for miles across Clinch Mountain trying to sell fruit trees.
He stopped at this house, and this girl was sitting on the porch playing an altar harp and singing, and that was my mother, Sarah.
She was just a teenager at the time, very young, and I think that was the first of many more trips across the mountain, probably, for my granddad, because I think he really did probably fall in love with her that day.
A.P. married Sarah in 1915. Later, his brother married her cousin, May Bell. She too was musical, and the 3 of them started performing together. Sarah sang and played the auto harp, and May Bell brought her unique guitar style to the group.
When I started playing the guitar, I didn't have nobody to play with me, so that's how I developed the style of picking in the rhythm too, you know. Mm-hmm. And they call it the Carter Scratch now, some of them do.
She did the lead and the rhythm at the same time. Mm-hmm. She didn't have to have anybody to play the lead for her because she would pick the lead. All right, the way she would do it would be... Played the lead and the melody, the rhythm too.
To begin with, the Carters played at social and church events in their small community, but by 1927, their audience was about to change dramatically.
About 1926, the Western Electric Company invented a carbon microphone. All of a sudden, the sound was vastly improved. Now you could, in fact, put everything you needed to make a record into the back of a 1927 touring car.
Up until now, record companies based in the big cities had concentrated on classical and vaudeville music. Ralph Peer, a New York record producer, recognized that there was a demand for other types of music, including the mountain music of the South.
Peer was one of those people who had the insight to see that, poor Southern whites have a distinctive sort of music which we can market to them by way of records.
The Carters heard that Ralph Peer was in Bristol, Tennessee, and that he was paying $50 to cut a record. A.P. convinced the others it would be worth going to one of the sessions.
I wanted to go, and they said there wasn't room for everybody, so they left me at home. Yeah, I remember them going. They was very excited. about it. It was something new, something different.
The Bristol sessions were to be the big bang of country music, but for the Carters, it nearly didn't happen. The 30 miles from Clinch Mountain was a long way on rough dirt roads, and their car tyres blew out. The journey took them all day. They only just made it to Pear's temporary recording studio, set up in an old hat factory.
Get 25% off absolutely everything in store.
You got one take usually, maybe a second take if you thought you were really good. And that would be it. So you had to get it right the first time.
We recorded on the 2nd day of August, 1927. Oh, the first song we ever did was Bury Me Under the Weeping Willow.
Everybody had to gather around the microphone. Pear had to figure out how far people had to get in and out to get just the balance. There was no mixing board. There was no chance to hear what you were getting from the sound. So it was really quite remarkable.
Under the weeping willow, yes, under the weeping willow tree. So he may know where I am sleeping, and perhaps he will weep over me. Tomorrow was our wedding day, but oh Lord, oh where is he? He's gone to seek him another bride, and he cares no more for me. Oh, bury me under the weeping willow, yes, under the weeping willow tree. So he may
Pear was so impressed with the Carters that he asked them to come back the following day. In all, they recorded 6 songs during these landmark sessions.
At first, they didn't even release Carter family records. They released gospel records because Pear felt that's what would sell well. But then when he finally released the Carter family records, they took off like a skyrocket. And all of a sudden, Pear realized something had indeed happened that summer in Bristol, and that what had happened basically was the birth of commercial country music.
For Ralph Pear, the Carter family, with their huge collection of songs, were heaven sent.
They sounded very traditional, but they had songs which they claimed to have written. Often songs they had found around, but they were uncopyrighted songs.
A.P. Carter did write his own lyrics, but he would also go on frequent song-finding trips. Roaming the mountains, he would collect ballads which had been handed down through families.
He was able to gather this treasure of literature, you know, these songs where people talked about life, the way life was, the way it is, their experiences, their loves, their losses, in this beautiful, clear, totally heart on their sleeve poetry.
The songs that A.P. found and adapted were sung in an artlessly affecting way that has endured for generations. The influence of Maybelle's guitar style has been equally far-reaching. One of her solos is the most replicated in country music.
That was Mother Maybelle's Wildwood Flower. And she played it much better than that, but you could tell immediately who it was playing it.
Anyone who plays traditional country music owes a debt to the Carter family.
Did I know who the Carter family was when I first picked up a guitar and learned to play Wildwood Flower? No. But my dad did, and he showed me how to play it. It's the passing down of this music from generation to generation.
As the first family of country, the Carters projected a powerful image of togetherness, but their lives together were troubled.
You listen to their music only, and if you didn't know anything about the Carters, you'd think they were this wonderful, close-knit family like the Waltons. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Although they continued to record songs together, the reality was that behind the scenes, Sarah had left AP.
She left on her own. She didn't take the kids with her. That's unbelievable in 1936.
My grandmother was probably liberated before people knew the term liberated in terms of women, certainly for women in this area. She did things that other ladies didn't do, divorcing or, wearing her slacks or smoking cigarettes. She was very progressive and unusual.
Went back home, Lord, my home was lonesome. Missed my mother, she was gone.
I think he probably never fully bounced back after that. It broke his heart. He never stopped loving her and never stopped getting excited when he knew that he would see her. And it's just very sad, I think, for him that, as much as he loved her, they couldn't work out their problems and be together.
To perform and record together, it was the 1930s and the Depression hit record sales badly. Work was scarce and money hard to come by. Music was a welcome release from the harshness of life. But although records were available, they were an expense most people couldn't afford.
People basically switched their musical alliances from records to the radio. If you got a radio, that was all you had to pay. And the music you got from the radio was just as free as it could be.
Something we all gathered around and watched the radio. It was our connection to the rest of the world, really, and it was where we heard whatever music we heard, because this was, even the old phonograph records weren't that great. But if you had a radio, you could turn the dial and hear everything that was going on.
As I read the letter.
Radio relied on live music, and more performers gave up trying to make records and turned instead to radio appearances. To fill airtime, the radio stations started transmitting live barn dances, which soon became the most popular shows.
All around the country, there were shows started that called themselves barn dances. They were really rural variety shows.
It was Saturday night picking part of music, you know what I mean? Something that, again, people could identify with. Say, hey, we got a group down here at the country store that can pick that good, But that is, because it was on the radio, it made it special.
Howdy, friends. Welcome to the Grand Ole Opry, the capital of country music throughout the world. Let her go, boys!
The most successful barn dance was WSM's Grand Ole Opry. Broadcast from Nashville, Tennessee, it was to become an American institution and to this day remains the longest-running radio show.
Well, back then you powered your radio with the wet cell batteries, the same battery you had in your car, and so we didn't listen to much radio during the week. We saved that battery for Saturday night so we could listen to the Grand Ole Opry.
The man that owned the little grocery store a quarter of a mile from us, he had a radio. It was a battery radio. And on Saturday nights, I've gone to his house when there'd be 30 people in his living room listening to the Opry on the radio.
Although it appeared to be a very simple, spontaneous show, the Grand Ole Opry was in fact highly orchestrated, with performers being encouraged to adopt a particular look.
It was
The announcer, George Hay, who created the dress code for the country performers, that they needed to look as though they came out of the country.
He really was an authentic, country-oriented guy. He had a saying that some of the groups sometimes would start playing kind of hot and all. He'd say, "Keep it down to earth, boys, keep it down to earth."
First, friends, we're going to hear from Roy Acuff and his Smoky Mountain Boys. Smoke it up, Roy.
Roy Acuff was the opera's first big star, and he quickly became a household name.
He had a wonderful mountain style of singing, and at the time he thought it was almost too old-fashioned, but the audience didn't.
From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, from the queen of flowing mountains to the South Belle by the shore, she's mighty tall and handsome and known well by all. She's the combination on the Wabash Cannonball.
He became the first really big solo singer on the Grand Ole Opry.
But radio did more than spread the music to a wider public. It affected the nature of the music itself. The new sensitive microphones changed singing styles, leading to quieter, more intricate harmonies, which became the hallmark of many brother acts to emerge in the 1930s.
There's a buzz that happens when family members that are related sing together that's just haunting.
Music in the air, turn your radio on.
The Stanley Brothers epitomized the brother harmony style, creating a unique sound which seemed to give new depth to songs.
Pillow did a vision appeared of a ladder so high it stood on the earth while the top reached the sky.
I like the harmony. There's a lot of people likes words. I like words too, but I think the harmony makes the song.
For me, when it comes to just that kind of harmony singing, it's Stanley Brothers all the way. I mean, the harmonies that they were eerie, unearthly.
Winds from the heavens may reel and may rock, but the angels they guarded from bottom to top.
Carter Stanley died in 1966, leaving Ralph to carve out his own solo career.
I've carried that singing on, you see, for 30-some years. And I never did come out front too much other than singing until he passed away, and then I had to.
The Louvin brothers, with their perfectly pitched voices, took harmony to new heights.
Rolling in the evening underneath the harvest moon, I was thinking about you.
The Louvin brothers were really cutting edge. They had followed in a long line of brother duets. Their songs were simple country songs, and yet their melodies, the way they did their harmonies, were just so unique.
We just sang together from children on up. He knew when the melody was going to go too high for me, and I knew it. So we didn't have to wink at each other or step on each other's toes. It got to where we could change in the middle of a word.
I wondered who you were talking to.
There's a thing that happens with duet harmonies that you don't get in three-part. They're jumping, they're going all the way from unison to octave and everything in between. And you have to do that when you play duet music. You have to use every trick you can think of to make it interesting.
Smiled at you. His eyes were filled with victory. He said, my sister wants to marry. Then my heart was filled with ease.
They did something that country music is very good at, and that is to take something that's old and making it new again.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto him as you have him do to you. Giving things that you can do without to help him with.
Despite their huge success, the Louvins fell out over Ira's drinking and eventually split up.
Brothers do have a history of breaking up for one reason or another.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto
I just didn't know how to handle a drinker, so that's what finally broke the team up. Half of the duet can't carry the show. I don't care how hard you work. You can't do both of the parts.
Legendary as the father of bluegrass.
It's hard to imagine what American music would sound like today without the influence of Bill Monroe.
How about a great big welcome for the old boy from Kentucky, Bill Monroe?
Not only was he an incredible musician to write and create music, but he was an unbelievable singer. There's never been another voice in Nashville like Bill Monroe.
I can get all the bluegrass boys to help me out here. We have a hymn for the folks tonight entitled A Voice from...
He had this high, piercing voice that could make you cry, could make you laugh. He was so powerful as a singer.
I hear a voice calling. It must be our Lord. It's coming.
This sound would become known as the High Lonesome.
I hear a voice calling. I've gained the reward.
It is almost a piercing sound. It works at the edge of almost an assault in the ear. It's always working that edge.
The Savior has paid a great price for me.
It's not real full voiced, you know, like with Big Eyebrows, more hit, and just kind of, it's real pointed.
So I follow his footsteps.
It's just when you reach way up and get them up high and then put a lonesome sound to them. There's a number of high voices, but not everybody puts that bell, I call it, in their voice, you know. I think you've got to put a feeling in it.
I've gained the reward for the land where we never shall die.
Bill Monroe was not a sappy country singer. He didn't sing these beautiful love songs, you know, tender. He was just a hard-driving, you know, aggressive, in-your-face with an attitude type player. Monroe had that lean-in attitude, that leaning into the microphone thing that rock and rollers have.
See the train come on around the bend, carrying the one that I love. Her beautiful body is still here on earth, but her soul has been called above. Body and soul, body and soul, that's how she loved me, with body and soul.
Not only was Bill Monroe an unbelievable musician, he took a little small instrument like a mandolin and made a music basically out of it.
He called his band the Bluegrass Boys after his home state of Kentucky. He'd hand-picked each of his musicians and seemed to be on a mission to create a new sound.
He was never especially forthcoming about what he was trying to do with his music. He was moody. He was a sort of mystery wrapped in an enigma, as somebody once said. But he was also an absolute creative genius.
Monroe's musical blend was constantly evolving, but it was only in 1945 when Earl Scruggs, a young banjo player from North Carolina, joined the mix, that the actual bluegrass sound began to be defined.
He'd been searching for a sound that he could really call his own. And I think when he heard Earl Scruggs play the banjo, I think it was like a light went off in his head, and he said, that's what I've been missing, that's what I've been waiting for, is that banjo sound that's going to revolutionize banjo playing. There was one of the old banjo players from the opera. He said, well, when he heard Earl Scruggs play the banjo, he said, well, I'm just going to take my banjo home and make a hen's nest out of it, you know?
To me, bluegrass, when I first came here, this style of banjo that I play had never been exposed before. And I came here with Bill Monroe, and that's where the sound, I guess, probably originated. And of course, everywhere I went, I had to take it with me because that's all I know is what I play.
Monroe could not have invented bluegrass music without the help of Earl Scruggs. A lot of people today even say that bluegrass isn't bluegrass if it doesn't have a Scruggs-style banjo in it.
The banjo styles that were really more prevalent during the time before Dad came here, a lot of times it might be someone that was sort of like a comedian's instrument. And again, it wasn't really so much of a lead instrument as it became once Dad introduced this new style.
It used to be what they call two-fingered, which is actually a little misleading. It was thumb and one finger. And when I was about 10 years old, I came up with a style that had the two fingers and thumb, which is called three-finger style.
Kind of before Earl Scruggs put the banjo and the drive and that whole real familiar tag to it, you know, it wasn't that much different from mountain music and string band music and whatnot, but just the element of Monroe's chopping mandolin and Earl Scruggs' driving banjo, it really then had something that you could define and say, this is what it is.
This was bluegrass, and it was to take the country music world by storm.
Sometimes people think that musical change takes a while, but in this case it was instantaneous. Overnight, everybody wanted to hear the Scruggs-style banjo.
But Earl Scruggs would only play with Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys for 2.5 years before leaving with guitarist and singer Lester Flatt. For all they'd added to Bill Monroe's sound, their parting from his band had been less than amicable.
Bill Monroe is what some people would call a hard case. If you played in his band, you were expected to do farm work in the off-road moments.
Monroe's disciplinarian ways were too much for many musicians, and few stayed with him for long.
More people work for Bill Monroe than has ever worked for, I'll say, 24 country bands, because he had a new person every week, just about it. And sometimes they'd only last 1 week, and then he'd have another new one next to it. next time. And all the musicians, of which there's been thousands of them that work at Bill Monroe, they would quit and go out and start their own. Say, well, what kind of music we couldn't do? We can't call our group Bluegrass Boys, but we can do bluegrass music the same as Bill's Boys does.
He was notorious also till the last years of his life for being sort of the chief of police of bluegrass authenticity. If Monroe heard music that purported to be bluegrass, but which he thought was not up to the mark, he would say, "That ain't no part of nothing."
In the late 40s, but the 50s saw rapid social change and a swift evolution of the music scene in the wake of rock and roll. To compete, country music lost some of its hillbilly soul and went electric. Bluegrass became the music industry's term for the old-fashioned stuff.
Country music really suffered, and especially, bluegrass groups like the Stanley Brothers and Flatt and Scruggs and Bill Monroe. They went from probably, $1,000 a day, which was a lot of money back in those days, to maybe if they could get, $100, $150 a night.
But as the 50s turned to the 60s, this perception of bluegrass as non-commercial ironically started the music on the road to revival.
It was starting to get the attention of another whole group of people in the marketplace, and a real young audience.
Reacting against the superficiality of consumerism and concerned with the country's political direction, a new generation of Americans sought a pure music closer to the country's folk roots. Bluegrass artists like Flatt and Scruggs found themselves on a whole new trip.
It came at a time when there were a lot of things happening in the country, and a lot of the songs, folk music songs, reflected that, as did earlier folk music songs that talked about hard times, real life sort of situations, and the music just reflected that.
Bluegrass is about authenticity, or a cry for authenticity, because authenticity only becomes an issue when you don't have it.
People rediscovered the old songs, and with them the old singers. Ralph Stanley's Man of Constant Sorrow touched a nerve in the American psyche once more. A.P. Carter did not live long enough to see this renaissance of his type of music, but Maybelle had continued performing with her daughters, and even Sarah Carter was occasionally persuaded to make an appearance.
Oh, listen to the train coming down the line, trying to make up all of her lost time from Buffalo to Washington.
The new lease of life given to bluegrass ensured the music would be inherited by a new generation.
Let's tell all these folks your name. You want to tell them? All right.
My name's Ricky Skaggs.
Ricky Skaggs. And you're how old?
7 years old.
7 years old.
My father bought me a mandolin when I was 5 years old. Showed me 3 chords, you know, and here are the little male bass chords, G, C, and D.
Most of the younger musicians who came to bluegrass in the 60s and beyond weren't content to play the music in the traditional way. Ricky Skaggs has been one of the most successful modernizers of the bluegrass sound, but not before serving his apprenticeship with the old masters.
It gives it such credibility because it's authentic. You know, people can kind of hint at it and all that, but he's pure. He's really that. He lived in those, you know, hills of Kentucky and knew those people growing up and knows the harmony structure of that music.
Hallelujah, I'm ready. I can hear the voices singing soft and low. Hallelujah, I'm ready. Hallelujah, I'm ready to go.
At a time when mainstream country music was highly produced and commercially driven, bluegrass was originating its own individual culture outside this industry. When Ricky Skaggs joined the already high-profile Emmylou Harris in the 70s, they would take bluegrass to a wider audience.
He has all the Ralph Stanley-isms. He does all those wonderful vocal, bluesy, bluegrass mountain things that kind of typify the mountain soul. I mean, Ralph is sort of the king of that. And Ricky just has it down, you know. He really is carrying on that tradition.
I could sing something from Ralph Stanley, and it was like, oh my God, I got to learn this song, you know. And will you show me this song or teach us, you know? Can I get the words to this?
I'm ready. Hallelujah, I'm ready to go.
He was able to bring, you know, that sort of bluegrass thing with the great harmonies, but really get the great country shuffles in there.
I can hear the voices singing soft and low. Hallelujah, I'm ready. Hallelujah.
He was the Wonder Boy. It was just like having an encyclopedia of bluegrass.
Emmylou Harris's passion for the traditional songs led her to the music of the Louvin brothers.
When Emmylou Harris came out with the If I Could Only Win Your Love in 1975, she introduced the Louvin Brother music catalog to untold numbers of people. And the If I Could Only Win Your Love was just the first of maybe a half a dozen Louvin Brothers songs that she cut.
She's the one that kind of really blended people that were rock and roll fans into saying, wow, the Carter family is really cool. All this really pure, great stuff is what she embraced.
Emmylou Harris's breakthrough made way for others, none more so than Alison Krauss. A singer and fiddle player from the Midwest, she is already the top-selling bluegrass artist of all time.
I I love the harmonies, the focus on harmonies. I love the focus on the offbeat. That's so fun to play with.
Alison Krauss is probably as far apart from Bill Monroe's music as you could get, but the elements are still the same. It still has those same instruments. It still has those same flavors.
Strict bluegrass, or bluegrass as I know it, is heavy on the banjo, heavy on the mandolin, and drums are gone. There's no drums in there, so I think that's the most identifiable part is the 5-string banjo played in a 3-finger style.
Tire me with your wanting ways. You can't by yourself get to be complete.
I think bluegrass is a totally different industry, and people are more into it for a living, but not for becoming millionaires, for sustaining the music out of the love of the music and the tradition.
But in 2000, traditional country music would finally reach a mainstream audience via the multi-million-selling soundtrack to the film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I don't think any of us ever imagined that it would this 6 million records so far and counting.
The soundtrack album showcased a range of traditional and bluegrass songs performed by contemporary artists.
Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Your mama's gone away and your daddy's gonna stay. Didn't leave nobody but the baby.
For Ralph Stanley, the success of the Oh Brother soundtrack has led to a resurgence of his music.
The body and leave it cold, to drop the flesh right off the frame, the earth and worm.
It must be so gratifying for him. I mean, he doesn't appear to have changed at all, and I don't think he will. I'm sure he looks on himself as an instrument of the music.
Whoa, oh, oh, death, won't you spare me over till another year? Won't you spare me over till another year?
I guess it's not unusual that many people living in a very modern world will embrace a funky old music which seems so simple.
Nashville music has never really, the Nashville community has never really give bluegrass the nod or never given it its blessing. It's always kind of looked at bluegrass as being hick, hillbilly, backwoods. We don't want to embrace what you are because it's really not commercial, Well, they can't say that anymore.
My latest son is saying